Forgotten by Design, Part 23B. Raxiel back in the fold. Inside Elysium Brews, the low hum of conversations and the soft clinking of glasses provided a familiar backdrop as Raxiel approached the shadowy corner booth where Dukar sat. A dimly lit lamp illuminated Dukar's face, revealing a sly smile as Raxiel extended his hand in greeting. They exchanged a firm handshake, and Dukar gestured for Raxiel to sit down, offering him a drink. The booth was secluded from the rest of the bar, giving the two men a semblance of privacy. The bartender promptly delivered 2 drinks, and the pair settled into their seats, surrounded by the warm glow of nostalgia and the distant memories of old times. Dukar raised his glass. "To old friends," he said, his voice steady but filled with underlying intensity. Raxiel met Dukar's gaze and returned the toast, lifting his own glass. "To old friends." They took a sip, letting the taste of the amber liquor linger on their tongues before Dukar leaned back, examining Raxiel. "It's been a long time, Raxiel, too long. 6 decades in the void can change a man." Raxiel gave a wry smile. "Some things change, others don't. Time away has a way of clarifying things." Dukar nodded knowingly. "You're back, and that's what matters. We've missed you. The old crew has missed you." They spent a few minutes reminiscing about their shared past, their exploits, shared beliefs, and missions they had once undertaken together. Dukar's stories flowed with ease, and Raxiel listened with genuine interest, occasionally adding his own memories to the mix. Then, Dukar's demeanor shifted, and he leaned forward, his eyes piercing through Raxiel. "But let's not get too lost in the past. I've heard rumors about your current activities." Raxiel remained composed, though he felt his muscles tense under Dukar's gaze. "Rumors, huh? You know how it is. People always talk." "Indeed," Dukar said, his voice turning cold. "But it seems like there's some truth to those rumors. Your association with Lansing and Lenara hasn't gone unnoticed." Raxiel took a sip of his drink, maintaining his calm exterior. "I've been away for a long time, Dukar. I've changed, but that doesn't mean I've forgotten my old friends." Dukar studied Raxiel's face for a moment, then leaned back, his smile returning. "I believe you, Raxiel, and I think it's time you rejoined us, stood up for the cause again. The old crew needs your tactical expertise." "To stand up against whom?" Raxiel asked, his curiosity piqued. "The humans," Dukar replied without hesitation. "They're gaining too much influence within the Federation. They've forgotten what they were created for." Raxiel's brow furrowed slightly. "What they were created for? Who are the humans?" Dukar's smile broadened as he pulled a tablet from his coat pocket and placed it on the table. With a few taps, he brought up a series of videos and documents. "Let me show you," Dukar said, sliding the tablet toward Raxiel. The screen flickered to life, revealing grainy footage of a laboratory filled with scientists in sterile white coats. The video showcased Dr. Lyrian, the lead geneticist responsible for creating the humans, explaining his vision and demonstrating the DNA modifications that would make them the perfect soldiers. The humans were designed for war, Raxiel. Genetically engineered to fight the Kriller, they were meant to be tools, not allies, Dukar said, his voice laced with contempt. Raxiel's face twisted in shock as he watched the videos and read the documents. He had been in prison for so long that he hadn't known about the full extent of humanity's origins. The idea of DNA manipulation was abominable to him, a practice he had always condemned. "I didn't know," he muttered, shaking his head. "And that's why you need to join us." "Lansing sitting outside in that hover car is a human," Dukar said, his voice low and persuasive. "There's a large shadow faction within the Federation ensuring that the right decisions get made. People like you and me, Raxiel, we're destined for greatness. But we need to make sure the Federation remains true to its purpose." "Destined for greatness, huh?" Raxiel repeated, his voice steady but conflicted. "The last time I helped the faction, I ended up in the void for 60 years. They plan to return me back there once they've got what they want from me. They're using me, and you want to use me. It sounds like a rock in a hard place." Dukar leaned closer, his voice firm and reassuring. "We recognize your sacrifice to the cause. We won't leave you like that again. You're one of us, and we'll protect you." Raxiel sat back, letting the implications sink in. The knowledge Dukar had shared was troubling. and the idea of a shadow faction pulling strings within the Federation was even more disturbing. "Destined for greatness, huh?" Raxiel repeated, his voice steady but conflicted. "Absolutely," Dukar said firmly. "Join us, and you'll see that for yourself." Raxiel took a deep breath, weighing his options. He was torn between his loyalty to Dukar and the faction versus his newfound allegiance to Lansing and Lenara. He knew he had to tread carefully. "All right," Raxiel said finally, giving a curt nod. "Tell me more about this shadow faction." Dukar smiled and leaned back, raising his glass. "To old friends and new beginnings." They toasted again, and Dukar began to outline the faction's plans, unaware of the internal turmoil Raxiel was hiding behind his calm demeanor. The flickering shadows in the dimly lit booth mirrored the moral ambiguity of their conversation, as Raxiel carefully listened to every word, knowing that the next steps he took could determine the fate of many. Forgotten by Design. Part 24. Raxiel's Inner Conflict. Raxiel listened intently as Dukar detailed the shadow faction's plans, occasionally nodding in agreement. The flickering shadows in the dimly lit booth mirrored the moral ambiguity of their conversation. Each word Dukar spoke was laced with fervor and conviction, drawing Raxiel deeper into the world of subterfuge and intrigue. He knew how dangerous Dukar could be, but he couldn't deny the power of his persuasive words. "Raxiel, this is our chance to reshape the Federation," Dukar said, his voice unwavering. "We need your expertise now more than ever. With your tactical skills and our collective vision, we can restore the Federation to its rightful purpose." Raxiel forced a smile, nodding thoughtfully. "It's good to see the old spirit still burning strong, Dukar." "Stronger than ever," Dukar affirmed. He leaned forward, his eyes searching Raxiel's face for any sign of betrayal or hesitation. "But I need to know where you stand." The weight of the question pressed heavily on Raxiel's chest. Internally, he was torn between his loyalty to Dukar and the faction versus his newfound allegiance to Lansing and Lenara. He knew he couldn't fully trust the shadow faction, but he couldn't let them suspect his true intentions either. He had to tread carefully. "I'm with you, Dukar," Raxiel said, his voice steady. "The cause has always been important to me, but after 60 years in the void, I need time to get up to speed. The Federation has changed." Dukar studied Raxiel's expression for a long moment before a sly smile spread across his face. "Of course, my friend, we all need time to adapt. But rest assured, we'll help you find your footing again." Raxiel nodded appreciatively, though his stomach churned with uncertainty. He could feel Dukar's gaze drilling into him, probing for any hint of betrayal or insincerity. He had to maintain his cover. "So, what's the next step?" Raxiel asked, leaning back and taking a sip of his drink. Dukar tapped the side of his glass thoughtfully. "There's an upcoming meeting. It's crucial to our plans. I want you there to prove your loyalty and to help us rekindle the old spirit." "What kind of meeting?" Raxiel asked, feigning genuine intrigue. "A gathering of like-minded individuals," Dukar explained cryptically. "We'll be discussing our next moves and rallying the crew. It's time to show the Federation that we mean business." Raxiel appeared genuinely intrigued, his mind racing with possibilities. "Count me in." Dukar's smile broadened. "Good. I knew I could count on you." He shared a minor detail about the meeting location and watched Raxiel's reaction closely. Raxiel kept his composure, nodding in understanding and expressing a desire to participate. "I'll be there," Raxiel promised, his voice resolute. "Whatever it takes to help the cause." Dukar raised his glass. "To old friends and new beginnings." They toasted again, and Dukar continued to share snippets of information about the shadow faction's plans, unaware of the internal turmoil Raxiel was hiding behind his calm demeanor. The flickering shadows in the dimly lit booth mirrored the moral ambiguity of their conversation as Raxiel carefully listened to every word, knowing that the next steps he took could determine the fate of many. Finally, Dukar leaned back, his eyes gleaming with satisfaction. "We'll be in touch with the exact details of the meeting soon. Stay alert." Raxiel gave a curt nod. "I'll be ready." As he stood up to leave, Dukar gave him a knowing smile, believing he had successfully brought Raxiel back into the fold. "Welcome back, Raxiel. It's good to have you." Raxiel offered a faint smile in return. Good to be back. With that, he turned and made his way to the bar's exit, his mind swirling with conflicting emotions. The warm glow of Elysium brews dimmed behind him as he stepped out into the cool night air. The hum of the city enveloped him, but he felt a chill as the reality of his situation sank in. He paused on the sidewalk, glancing back at the bar's entrance. Ducar's words echoed in his mind, promising loyalty and protection, but Raxiel couldn't shake the feeling that he was walking a tightrope over a pit of vipers. The Shadow faction had its claws deep within the Federation, and any misstep could mean a swift return to the void. Raxiel took a deep breath and made his way down the bustling street toward the hovercar where Lansing and Lenara awaited him. He knew they would be anxious to hear about his encounter with Ducar, and he needed their guidance more than ever. As he approached the vehicle, Lenara rolled down the window, her expression filled with concern. "Raxiel, what happened in there?" Raxiel slipped into the back seat and shut the door behind him, the dimly lit cityscape casting long shadows across his face. He glanced between Lansing and Lenara, his expression conflicted. "He believes I'm back in the fold," Raxiel said finally. "But this Shadow faction, it's bigger than we thought." Lansing frowned, leaning closer. "How big?" Raxiel's gaze hardened. "Big enough to pull strings throughout the Federation." Lenara's eyes widened. "What are they planning?" Raxiel took a deep breath. "An upcoming meeting. They want me there to prove my loyalty." Lansing nodded, his jaw clenched. "Then we'll make sure you're not going in alone." Raxiel gave a curt nod, his resolve strengthening. He had a role to play, and he couldn't afford to falter. The fate of many hung in the balance, and he would need to tread carefully in the dangerous game of shadows and alliances. Shadows within the Federation. Deep within the bowels of the Federation, hidden from prying eyes, lay the command center of the Shadow faction. This underground base was bathed in the eerie glow emanating from the multitude of holographic screens. The tense and secretive atmosphere mirrored the seriousness of the covert operations being managed here. The walls were lined with advanced technology and surveillance equipment, illuminating the faces of various operatives hard at work. At the center of it all stood the faction leader, known by his codename Director 4. He was a high-ranking member of the Federation, his tailored uniform adorned with discreet insignias that symbolized his allegiance to the Shadow faction and his authority within this clandestine hierarchy. He stood tall before a massive holographic display screen, speaking into a secure communicator with a demeanor of cold calculation and unwavering authority. "Director 4, give me a status report on Lenara's investigation involving Raxiel and Lansing," a commanding voice demanded through the communicator. The voice belonged to the Overseer, head of the Shadow faction, whose commanding tone reverberated throughout the command center. Director 4 remained expressionless as he replied, "Lenara and Lansing are under close watch. We've placed operatives in key positions throughout their team, ensuring that every move is monitored." With a tap on his wrist communicator, the holographic screen shifted to show real-time surveillance feeds of Lenara, Lansing, and Raxiel in the hovercar outside Elysium Brews. Director 4's lips curled into a faint smirk as he continued. "Raxiel's recent meeting with Ducar went as expected. He appears to be reintegrating with the faction, though our operatives report a lingering hesitation in his demeanor." "And Lenara and Lansing?" the Overseer demanded. "They're playing their part well, continuing to rely on Raxiel for intelligence. Their investigation into Ducar's network is ongoing, but we are feeding them carefully curated information to maintain their trust while keeping them in the dark." The Overseer considered the report for a moment, then replied, "Ensure that Raxiel remains within our grasp. He is a valuable asset, but his loyalty cannot be trusted. If he shows any sign of betrayal, you know what must be done." Director 4 nodded, his expression firm. "Understood. I'll keep a close eye on him." The Overseer shifted his tone slightly. "And what of the wreckage from the ambassador ship explosion?" Director 4 tapped another button on his wrist communicator, and the holographic display changed to show fragments of wreckage laid out on a table, alongside several data tablets filled with analytical reports. "Our analysts have uncovered evidence suggesting sabotage," he explained. "Traces of explosive compounds and tampered navigation controls point to a deliberate attack. However, the wreckage contains clues that could implicate several high-profile Federation members. The Overseer's voice grew icy. Close off the investigation, destroy all recovered materials, and erase any data that could lead back to us. This thread cannot be allowed to unravel. Director 4 bowed his head slightly in acknowledgement. Understood. The wreckage will be disposed of, and our analysts reassigned. And the analysts? They will receive new assignments far removed from the incident. A long silence followed before the Overseer spoke again. Good. Now, what of our agent on the USF Valiant? Director 4's eyes flickered with anticipation as he replied, The agent is in position and awaiting further instructions. He is fully integrated into the crew and prepared to execute the next phase of our plan. And Genesis Station? The Overseer probed. The agent will infiltrate Genesis Station during the upcoming Federation visit. His primary objective is to disrupt the diplomatic proceedings and gain control of the station via our mole program. Based on the previous intelligence gathered during first contact, we've been able to create an undetectable worm for their antiquated computer systems that will allow our agent to take control of the station and cause an unfortunate accident. The Overseer's voice was low but firm. Ensure everything is in place. The Federation must remain fractured and the humans' influence must be curtailed. Keep me informed of any developments. Understood, Director 4 replied, his tone unwavering. As the secure line went silent, Director 4 turned to a digital map displaying the locations of various Federation assets and Shadow Faction operatives. His finger hovered over the representation of the USF Valiant, then shifted to Genesis Station. He pondered for a moment, his eyes narrowing as he considered the next steps. Lieutenant, he called out without turning. Yes, Director 4. When the next data burst is sent to the USF Valiant, make sure we tag on a covert message to our agent with the objectives. The lieutenant nodded, his fingers gliding across the holographic interface to bring up the communications hub. He deftly crafted a coded message containing the detailed instructions for the agent aboard the USF Valiant, embedding it within the routine data burst to avoid detection. The director watched for a moment before moving to a separate console where a map of Genesis Station's layout was displayed. He studied the map, tracing potential entry points with his finger. He knew the agent on the USF Valiant was well placed, but the operation's success would depend on precise timing and coordination. Director 4 stepped back, surveying the command center with a critical eye. His gaze swept across the busy operatives and the glowing screens, his face a mask of resolve and determination. He knew the stakes were high, and any misstep could unravel their plans. But he remained confident, for the Shadow Faction's grip on the Federation was strong, and their influence ran deep. Turning to his lieutenant, Director 4 gestured toward the surveillance feeds on the holographic display. Keep our eyes on Lenara and Lansing. I want to know their every move. The lieutenant nodded, his fingers gliding across the holographic interface to bring up additional feeds, each showing a different angle of their target's activities. Director 4 took a deep breath, allowing the weight of his responsibilities to settle on his shoulders. The plans to upend the Federation's balance of power quietly moved forward as he orchestrated a symphony of subterfuge and manipulation from the shadows.